The ceramic coffee mug slipped from Sarah's fingers and shattered against the kitchen floor as she stared at the crayon drawing in her other hand. The smell of spilled coffee mixed with the waxy scent of broken crayons scattered across the linoleum, but all Sarah could focus on were two words scrawled in shaky 4-year-old letters at the bottom of the paper. "Help me." Rain drummed relentlessly against the kitchen window, each drop echoing the sudden pounding of Sarah's heart. The drawing felt rough and worn between her trembling fingers, as if it had been folded and unfolded countless times. Red crayon wax had rubbed off slightly on her thumb, leaving a mark that looked almost like blood. The kitchen counter was cluttered with the usual chaos of a single mother's evening routine. Greasy takeout containers from last night sat next to this morning's unpaid bills. Emma's artwork was scattered everywhere, mixed in with grocery lists and appointment reminders. Sarah had been mindlessly gathering the drawings to make space for dinner prep, ready to toss most of them into the overflowing trash can like she did every few days. But something about this particular drawing had made her pause. The house Emma had drawn was detailed for a 4-year-old's work. Stick figures stood inside, one large, two small. But what caught Sarah's attention were the dark scribbles covering one of the small figures, as if someone had tried to erase it. Red crayon streaks that looked disturbingly like tears ran from its face. The paper was thin from aggressive coloring, worn almost transparent in places. Sarah's bare feet stepped carefully around the coffee puddle and broken ceramic as she reached for another drawing from the pile. The waxy smell of crayons grew stronger as she shuffled through them. This one showed the same house, but the small figure was outside now, looking through a window. More red marks, more desperate, uneven letters. S-C-A-R-E-D. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the sudden quiet. Sarah could hear her own breathing, shallow and quick. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Be careful not to entertain angels unaware, child. Sometimes they come in disguise." She'd always thought Mrs. Chen was an angel, the sweet elderly woman who'd answered Sarah's child care ad 6 months ago with such reasonable rates and kind eyes. Maybe she'd been entertaining angels unaware, but not the ones she'd expected. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her small bare feet making soft padding sounds on the linoleum. She was clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one that used to sit prettily on her dresser, but now never left her grip. The rabbit's fur was matted from constant handling, and one ear was darker than the other from being rubbed so often. "Mommy? You look scared." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah knelt down among the broken ceramic pieces, the crayon drawing still clutched in her hand. The paper crackled softly as she smoothed it out. "Emma, sweetheart, can you tell me about your pictures?" Emma's eyes darted to the drawings scattered across the counter. Her small fingers twisted the rabbit's ears, a gesture Sarah was now realizing she'd seen far too often lately. The kitchen smelled of old French fries, spilled coffee, and that distinctive waxy crayon scent that seemed to follow Emma everywhere. "Just pictures," Emma whispered, her voice getting smaller. Sarah pointed to the detailed house in the drawing. The crayon marks were heavy in some places, light in others, as if Emma had pressed hard during the scary parts. "This house looks very real. Where have you seen it before?" Emma stepped closer, avoiding the broken mug pieces. Her cotton pajamas made a soft swishing sound as she moved. "That's Mrs. Chen's house." Sarah's chest tightened. The rain outside seemed to grow louder. "And these people in the house? That's me." Emma pointed to the small figure covered in dark scribbles. Her fingernail was bitten down to the quick, Sarah noticed. "And that's Tommy." The name hit Sarah like cold water. She'd never heard Emma mention a Tommy before. She kept her voice gentle, though her heart was racing. "Who's Tommy, honey?" "He stays at Mrs. Chen's sometimes. He's big like you." Emma's voice got even quieter. "But he's not nice like you." The kitchen felt suddenly smaller. Sarah could smell the lingering scent of yesterday's dinner, mixed with crayon wax and fear. "What do you mean he's not nice?" Emma looked at her feet, her toes curling against the cold linoleum. "He pushes me, hard, and he says words that make my tummy hurt." She paused, hugging her rabbit so tight that the fabric stretched. "Mrs. Chen doesn't see because she takes her sleepy medicine and goes to her room." Sarah's hands began to shake as she reached for more drawings. Each piece of paper felt fragile, important. The waxy residue from the crayons left slight smudges on her fingertips. "Did you try to tell anyone about Tommy?" Emma nodded, and Sarah could see tears forming in her daughter's eyes. "I tried to tell you, in the car after Mrs. Chen's. But you always said, 'Tell me at home,' and then you had to make dinner, or do laundry, or pay bills." Emma's voice cracked. "And Tommy said if I told anyone, bad things would happen to you too." The sound of rain against glass seemed deafening now. Sarah pulled Emma into her arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo mixed with the lingering smell of fierce sweat that she now realized had become Emma's constant companion. The rabbit was pressed between them, its matted fur rough against Sarah's cheek. How many times had Emma tried to talk during those rush car rides home? How many times had Sarah said, "Just a minute, baby," or "We'll talk after dinner," and then gotten distracted by the endless demands of single motherhood? "Emma, listen to me very carefully." Sarah held her daughter's face gently in her hands. Emma's cheeks were warm and slightly sticky from dried tears. "You're never going back to Mrs. Chen's house. Never. Do you understand me?" Emma's eyes widened, and for the first time in months, Sarah saw genuine hope there. "Really? Promise?" "I promise. And sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. You were so brave to keep trying to tell me." That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep clutching her rabbit, Sarah spread all the drawings across her kitchen table under the harsh fluorescent light. The crayon smell was overwhelming with so many pictures together. Each drawing told part of a story Sarah had been too busy to read. Some showed the small figure huddled in corners. Others had the large figure with arms raised. One particularly worn drawing showed tiny handprints pressed against what looked like a door. The red crayon was rubbed down to nothing in several places, creating texture Sarah could feel under her fingertips. Sarah thought about the past few months through new eyes. Emma's sudden nightmares that started around the time she began staying at Mrs. Chen's. The way she'd stopped asking for her favorite goldfish crackers. How she'd become clingy, wanting to stay home instead of going anywhere. The regression in potty training that Dr. Martinez had dismissed as perfectly normal for her age. The signs had been everywhere, written in waxy red crayon and spoken through small behavioral changes Sarah had been too overwhelmed to piece together. Her grandmother's words came back to her again. "Be careful not to entertain angels unaware." Maybe the real angel had been Emma all along, a 4-year-old with crayons and courage, trying to save herself the only way she knew how. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to both her jobs. The phone felt heavy in her hand as she dialed. She took Emma to Dr. Martinez, who examined her daughter with gentle hands that smelled of soap and patience. The doctor's office had that distinctive medical smell, but Emma clutched her rabbit and answered questions bravely. Children Emma's age often can't verbalize complex trauma, Dr. Martinez explained to Sarah afterward. They communicate through behavior changes and artwork. Emma found a very creative way to tell you what was happening. The doctor helped Sarah file the necessary reports and recommended a child psychologist. Within hours, authorities were investigating Mrs. Chen's childcare situation. Sarah also made other calls that day to her supervisor at the hospital requesting an immediate switch to day shifts, even though it meant a significant pay cut, to 3 different daycare centers, begging to be moved up on their waiting lists, to her sister asking for help with Emma while she rearranged their entire life. 2 weeks later, the investigation confirmed Sarah's worst fears. Mrs. Chen had been heavily medicated and essentially unconscious during most of the childcare hours. Her 15-year-old grandson, Tommy, who had his own history of behavioral problems, had been left unsupervised with the younger children. 2 other parents came forward with similar concerns they'd been afraid to voice. Sarah enrolled Emma in therapy, where she learned to recognize the subtle ways children communicate distress. The therapist's office smelled like vanilla candles and felt safe. Emma began to draw new pictures there, still houses but with doors that opened and figures that smiled. 3 months passed like pages turning. Emma started at Sunshine Daycare, a place with security cameras and strict pickup policies. The building smelled like disinfectant and apple juice, and Emma's new teacher, Miss Kelly, had kind eyes and painted fingernails that Emma loved to look at. Sarah had switched to day shifts, taking that pay cut but gaining something invaluable: presence. Their evening routine now included heart talks at the kitchen table, where Emma could share anything from her day while Sarah really listened. The kitchen still smelled like dinner cooking and homework crayons, but now it felt safer. One rainy afternoon, similar to that day of discovery months before, Emma came home with a story about her new friend. "There's a boy named Tyler in my class," Emma told Sarah during their heart talk. The smell of mac and cheese wafted from the stove. "He draws sad pictures like I used to, all dark scribbles." Sarah looked up from stirring dinner. "What did you do?" "I told him that mommies and daddies always want to know when kids are scared, even when they look really busy." Emma was coloring while she talked, pressing the crayon firmly against fresh paper. "And I said sometimes kids have to keep trying to tell until the grown-ups understand." Emma paused, considering her words carefully as she switched to a red crayon. "I told him that drawing pictures is a really good way to show feelings when words are too hard." That weekend, Tyler's mother called Sarah, her voice thick with tears of gratitude. Tyler had finally told his parents about a problematic situation with his after-school program supervisor, inspired by Emma's gentle encouragement. Sarah hung up the phone and found Emma in her room, sitting at her little table with crayons scattered around her. The familiar waxy smell filled the space. Emma's new picture showed 2 children holding hands under a bright rainbow, with careful letters spelling "Friends Help" across the top. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Sarah said, sitting cross-legged beside her daughter on the carpet. "It's for Tyler, so he remembers that talking to grown-ups helped make things better." Sarah watched Emma color inside the lines with steady, confident strokes. The drawings on Emma's walls now were explosions of color. Flowers with faces, houses with wide-open doors, stick figures with arms stretched towards sunny skies. But in Sarah's bedside drawer, she kept one of the old drawings. Not the one that said, "Help me." That had been submitted as evidence. Instead, she kept the one that showed a small figure reaching toward a door that seemed impossibly high. She kept it not as a reminder of her failure, but as a testament to a little girl's persistence and faith that someone would eventually reach back. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, her daughter handed her a new drawing. The paper was smooth and clean, still smelling faintly of crayon wax. "What's this one about?" Sarah asked. "It's us," Emma said simply. "We're both smiling because we learned how to really talk to each other." The picture showed 2 figures sitting across from each other at a table, Their faces turned toward one another. Hearts floated above their heads like speech bubbles. At the bottom, in Emma's improving handwriting, were the words, "We listen now." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in that familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood safety reclaimed. Outside, rain began to fall again, but this time it sounded like a lullaby instead of an alarm. Sometimes we entertain angels unaware, and sometimes those angels are 4-year-old artists with crayons and courage, teaching us that love isn't just about providing and protecting from a distance. It's about being present enough to hear the whispers before they become screams, to feel the texture of fear in a child's artwork, to smell the waxy desperation of messages written in red crayon and delivered with the faith that someone who loves them will eventually stop rushing long enough to really look.